welcome to BWTV. Today I'm joined by two special guests. I have with me Mr. Rajnish and Mr. Aloke Bajpai, who are the co-founders of Ixigo. Welcome both. It's a pleasure to have you. Let's start with how was your journey started, and also those initial 5 years when you were not able to secure the seed fund, and what's happening today when you are running a profitable business.
Yeah, so if we go back in time, 2006 is when we started working on the idea of Ixigo. Actually, both of us go back a very long way. We went to IIT Kanpur together. So 1997 is when we first met.
My goodness.
So it's been like 27 years, almost. Yeah, and I think post IIT, we were just lucky to have a job at the same company. So we were both working for Amadeus in Europe, where we spent about 4 years together. And then I went to business school and then came back to India. We started Ixigo in May 2006 in terms of working on the idea. And then we launched in June 2007. And yes, the early years were very hard. I think it was probably a very tough environment to raise funding those days. There were hardly any investors in India.
Anything to add, Rajnish? Any major milestones you would like to share in your business journey?
I think the initial, like Alok said, the initial years were really tough. We were trying to monetize in the beginning. And it was not easy because obviously you had to go and explain your business model to airlines and OTAs, and it was very hard to do that. So it was a very new business model. Meta search is what we did. So that was the toughest part because we had a team, we'd hired like a few people and we had to maintain their salaries, etc. But fortunately, I think we got a really good initial seed investor in William Klipgen. And he had built a similar business. We understood our model and thankfully that worked for us. But I think the biggest milestone was not raising seed fund. In fact, the biggest milestone was, when we built the product, we were in this phase of, expanding and becoming bigger and raising a larger round, but we realized that larger round was not needed. And we realized that when we failed to raise the round and Lehman Brothers collapsed in 2008, roughly. And that is when the real test came, right? Because we, as a team, the choice was to fire half the, team versus, making them all go on very little salary. We did not want to take that call. And in the beginning, I think as founders, we were very naive. So, but in that naivety, the good thing that happened was that we realized that the best thing to do in situations like these is you just have to be very transparent with your team. So we just went out there, got everybody in a room and we told them what we were facing and we said, we need some help. So we decided to do this, which is letting go of half of you. But they said that maybe that's not the best solution. So they came back and they gave us a solution that they were all willing to take 50% salary cut and still go ahead and work and follow the vision of building what we wanted to build. So I think that was the biggest turning point in our business and not the business goals that we achieved afterwards, because those were a side effect of having a team that really believed in us and made us feel that, they were backing us, because we never had that confidence. You need an event like that to get that kind of a confidence from your team. So,
given the fact that India per se seen a startup boom specifically in 2020, 2019, 2021, when the actual startup golden period, so to say. But then when in your journey, I look back, I think that then there must have been a couple of waves when you have kind of witnessed many good and not so good phases of building a brand. This is a major one of them. You talked about, you mentioned about your business goals. When I come to numbers, you clocked 380 crore in the last year and you yet to go to your target, which is 500 crore. How far have you covered and what's your trajectory right now?
So yeah, FY22 we had done 380 crore plus in revenue, but FY23, which was last year, we've crossed 500 crores in revenue. In fact, we will soon be publishing our audited financials so for the world to see. But we're very happy with that progress. Like, we've also had a fully profitable year. We've done a PAT, which is, almost 23 crores, right, in FY23. And I think a large part of the growth that we saw post-COVID has come by the sheer fact that we've been very focused on the tier 2, 3 market. So one of the things we realized during the Ixigo journey is that though there were many online travel companies, no one was focusing on the next billion users or the tier 2, 3 market. Most people were actually copying the Western OTA business model of just going after flight bookings and hotel bookings and so on and so forth. Whereas we took a look at the market and said, 93% of Indians have never stepped inside an airport before. Why should they not be considered travelers worthy enough to build something for, right? So 2012-13, we started looking at the train market, and we built the train app, which is now the most popular, train utility app in India. And then we got into transactions in 2017. And over time, we started building monetization. So I think most of the monetization in the Ixigo journey has come only in the last 5 to 6 years. But before that, for 1 decade, we were building the foundation of a great utility product, right? Right from meta search to train app to what we did on hotels and buses, also more utility-like initially. And over time, once we had trust, once we had millions of users coming in, we then took a stab at monetization. So like Rajnish said, in the first 1 year, we tried miserably to monetize and didn't achieve much. But then we looked at the core problems nobody else was solving, solved them with technology, with AI. No one was talking about AI in 2013-14, but like Rajnish and team built probably the first few AI products in the travel industry. And I think we have been able to now demonstrate that those products are not just nice, cool products that bring a lot of traffic and users, but you can actually monetize by building the trust on top and selling tickets and other products, value-added services. So I think in the last few years that has played out very nicely. We now are growing profitably. Our EBITDA margin is growing year on year. We are seeing very healthy signs of repeat and retention, which give us confidence that we'll continue accelerating our growth from here.
Good to know. Now that we know that your journey Ixigo is now profitably growing, we know that EBITDA margin is growing. We know that you closed PAT at 23 crore. Let's stick to profitability. And in your opinion, what are some of the major factors that impacted this positive growth? What were some of the great, excellent factors that impacted your growth, maybe consciously or maybe in the hindsight? What would you say?
See, I think financials are just a result of all the things we've done, right? I like, we've never been very obsessed about, as a, from a numbers perspective, we've never been very obsessed about, look, we need to do X amount of profit this year. I don't think we spend a lot of time discussing that. Instead, we're passionate about building for things that people actually care about, right? When it comes to travel, there are problems nobody's solving, and maybe Rajnish can add to this. But I think our passion has always been about solving those problems and then figuring out monetization much later. But most of the time that works out because once you have trust, you solve real customer problems that travelers care about. You can always monetize at the end. And it's just that we've been a lot more intensely focused on monetization now last 5 years that you start seeing it flow into the bottom line. And our philosophy has been to stay lean, right, and not sort of bloat the company, because we have seen what happens when you're overfunded and you bloat the company and then you have to go down the path. So we've seen those things, right? So we've just been extremely cautious at not going down that path in the good times. When we had the capital, we have not sort of gone ahead and done some of the silly things that we've done in the very early years. And I think that's now flowing as operating leverage into the bottom line. Yeah. Maybe you want to add something?
Yeah, see, there are 2 phases of an organization, right? We are unlike other OTAs because more of the OTAs, they started by building a transactional business. On day one, they were selling tickets. We were not. And our business is more akin to a WhatsApp or a Facebook or an Instagram. The goal was to solve a core user problem. So there are 2 phases in the business. The first phase is when you're focusing on problem solving, which is where you're focusing on customer acquisition, user growth. And obviously there's no monetization, so there's no profit or margin discussion there. And the second phase is when the monetization starts. So once we started monetization, See, obviously at a unit economics level, obviously the business has to make sense. Otherwise you not get into that business at all. But you can only become profitable when the operating leverage starts to hit. And obviously, once you build a large company with a large user base, you will not have like 5 people team. You will have a team which is much larger. And in order to hit the point where you are able to kind of get to break even, it will take you some time to grow transactions. So our goal was just to make sure that organically those users should start getting into the monetization funnel and start transacting. The rest happens automatically, and this is exactly what happened. We focused on the core, got the user, the flywheel was kicking in. We just had to make sure that we build a great product and a great customer experience on which people would just automatically onboard the funnel, start transacting, and we reached there, like, fortunately.
I'm sure this line of thought kind of helped you to be frugal throughout. If given a chance, what would be, let's say 3 or let's say 5 things you would want to change in your whole journey of building Ixigo?
Look, I think at times you get bogged down by constraints and you don't think big enough, right? I think for a long time, because we couldn't raise funding, maybe we were not thinking big enough on other areas where we could have. And over time, once we had more confidence, more revenue, more profits coming in, we started taking bolder and bigger moves. But I think some of those can be actually done without capital early enough, right? So I think my advice is always to think bigger than what your current canvas allows you to. And, who knows, you might end up executing. Even if you don't reach there, you'll end up building something big.
Anything specific you would want to change if given a chance to go back?
It's hard to say that now, because everything I say will be in hindsight. And, one could say that, for example, like, we always thought that we should have, gone ahead and build that without capital and, maybe think bigger. But the fact is that there are two sides of the story. Like, if you're too aggressive, you're too ambitious, you might end up burning through and just going down. So if we are here today, it's also because, some of those things just happened as they had to happen. And if I go back and say that maybe we should have, not launched that product, or instead build that, or been more aggressive or less, maybe it would have worked, maybe it would not have worked. I'm not really sure about that. So I'm happy with how, we have come so far. I think the more important thing is actually the journey. If you have enjoyed those 15, 17, you cannot slug it out for so long if you're not having fun. Absolutely. So that's the bottom line. If that's happening, it's fine. You don't change anything.
Great fun, huh? Building this.
So far, so good.
Roller coaster, we love to.
So far, so good. They say there's never a dull day at Ixigo, so there's a reason for that.
So 2 parts of my next question. One is, what are your current focus areas? Where are your investment going in? What are your current focus areas? Second, what are some of the potential challenges you're facing right now? Let's say, just because given the fact that there are plenty of external factors that can be impacting your business some way or the other. What are some of those challenges? And keeping that in mind, what are your focus areas right now for, let's say, next 6 to 12 months?
You go first.
Yeah, there's always been challenges. That's the reality, and you just have to kind of get around that. Current scenario, I would say, we are all living in probably the greatest inflection point of technology in the history of humanity.
I call it happy convergence.
Yeah, and it's much bigger than the Industrial Revolution or any other inflection point that humanity has had, and that also makes it very tough because we're going through a period where there's so much uncertainty, both in terms of how this new technology is going to evolve and geopolitical instability. Everything around is extremely uncertain. So no matter what we do right now, we will not know who's going to be the winner at the end of the day, because a lot is changing and we're getting into like a very, very unknown territory, right? So all we are trying to do right now is that we're just seeing what we can do with this new tech, and we're investing very heavily in that. That's our strategy. So we've been like one of the early adopters. I published my first AI paper in 2004, right? So it's been 20 years almost, right? So we are a big believer in this tech right from day one since we started the company. I've had a research team since like 15 years now, like a team solely focused on research AI. We've had our AI products launched in 2009-10, so we're sitting in 2023. So obviously we are very invested in that. But the thing is that if we do not leverage what's happening today, all that investment would be for nothing, right? So you really want to be like the company that rides on that disruption and creates the disruption rather than getting disrupted by a new tech, right? And in order to do that, you need to be really prepared for that. So we're investing very heavily in that tech. We're building capabilities, knowledge, skills inside the organization so that we could take advantage of that and probably be the company that creates that disruption instead of getting disrupted by it.
Fair point. Anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think our track record in that respect has been quite good, right? So we anticipated the mobile revolution and built ahead of everybody else actually for it. We went mobile first in our thinking back in 2010-11, right? And I think after a few years, it started showing up as being the most downloaded travel app in India by far. But that philosophy actually kicked in very early, right? In the organization that mobile is where the future is and take a big bet. Similarly, I think going from meta to transactions, which many metas in the world are now making that transition from meta to OTA or like hybrid. We made that very early and we kind of bet our entire company on that transition back in 2017 first for train and then 2019 for flights. We did that transition. So I think if we are able to ride these transitions well, right, it not just ensures that we will find our next big growth engine, but it also at the end ensures that you are still alive, right? I mean, at the end of the day, cycles of disruption happen in a way where you believe you're very big at something, but that thing ceases to be very important, right? And the least you can do to actually prevent that is just keep betting on new things time to time. So we have done that many times. In fact, some of those bets maybe even didn't pay off, but it's okay. Like some of those things will not grow big, but the ones that do might become career defining for you. Like for us, trains was another big bet, which kind of paid off and today brings in, like a large percentage of our users and revenue, right? And I think those kind of non-obvious bets are what the Ixigo journey has actually been all about. We have done a lot of things which are counterintuitive. Like I'll give you 2 or 3 more examples. When COVID arrived, we actually proactively gave refunds from our bank before the airlines gave it to us, not knowing whether we'll actually get it or not.
We were accelerating in the backwards inventories.
We did not let go a single person in our team. Unlike almost every travel company in the world did that, but we had a very different approach and philosophy. For almost a decade, we were not doing any traditional above the line marketing, but instead doing a lot of, like viral video marketing. And, like our playbook has been very different in how we sort of also promote ourselves, right? It's been a very product-led growth and content marketing-led growth. Very few examples of that exist in this part of the world, right? But I think we've been inspired by the playbook from the Valley in some companies where, you can pull off a completely product and word of mouth led growth, and Ixigo is probably one of the only examples that did that in the first 10 years. So I think from that perspective, we've been an outlier in how we operate. Obviously now some of that is starting to show in our financials, but we think that we can still build a much larger company than exists there. We still don't do a lot of things, right? So we are largely right now a transportation app, right, which does flights, trains and buses very well, but hotels, packages, there's so many other things that today we don't do. But if we want to be the most relevant travel company for our users, we need to do that, right? So I think you'll see us more active in some of those areas.
Yeah, good to know. I mean, I was about to ask this and come to this point of discussion as well. How do you look your plans going ahead? What are some of the future growth plans about expansion or let's say tapping more customers? How are you looking at tapping more users, let's say into tier 2, tier 3 cities? How are you looking at that? What's new can be expected from Ixigo in this year or let's say next year?
So almost 90% of our users already come from tier 2, tier 3 cities. So I think the challenge or the big area of focus now is to say what more can we do for these users. A lot of them come maybe just to check where their train is or whether their PNR is confirmed or not, or some of them will come and maybe do transactions with us. But I think the idea of being more and more relevant for all these users and building things that they want when it comes to travel. And travel is a complex category because it's not just about buying the ticket. There's so much you can do before the ticket gets bought. And we haven't talked about it yet, but we've launched an AI-based tool there as well. And then there's so much you can do after the ticket has been bought, because many companies leave you high and dry at that point of time where you need them during the trip or after the trip, right? And I think we are trying to be relevant across. But I think scale-wise, we've hit like almost 10,000 crores a year of GTV. That's the run rate that we are at right now. But still, if you look at the overall market, it's much bigger, right? Close to $20 billion of transactions a year when it comes to online. So we still have a long way to go in terms of taking more of that market or helping to grow that market. But yeah, I think I'll just say that we are trying to stay relevant, with the evolving needs of these tier 2, 3 customers. I don't think we still understand very well, this market. It's like a rabbit hole. Every time we build something, we have new realizations, new things come to light, and then
that keeps you going.
That keeps us going.
Is anything specific? What are your short-term as well as long-term goals for Ixigo?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, like we said, we are quite well penetrated in the tier 2, 3 audience compared to a lot of players out there, and that's by design, because we started going after them much earlier, right? 2014 is when we launched our Trains app, and that was like our, that's how we created that, head start. But since then, one thing hasn't changed, which is we've always focused on solving the pain areas of those customers, right? And that is what helps us keep growing. If we stop that and we just keep focusing only on monetization, then I don't think, we will be able to sustain the user growth that we have. So we have this two-pronged strategy that we always keep in mind, which is that do not stop focusing on core customer problems, and we keep working on that all the time, which is what gets us the organic growth. So we don't spend much. We've never spent so much on customer acquisition, although we are the largest by MAU, DAU, whatever you call, in travel. But we'll continue to do that if we continue to solve those user problems, which is where we focus half energies on. Having said that, we have enough users to monetize and reach a much higher level of profitability, etc., from our existing base of users. And hence, the other strategy is obviously to keep building a great product experience and keep onboarding those customers who are coming from different use cases and making them transact, right? So this is, in a nutshell, what we always work on. I mean, there could be changes in the strategy, like here and there in the short term, mid term, but if you think about it from a long term perspective, that's how we build the business.
When you don't, actually most of our inflection points were about not following somebody else's playbook and just saying, hey, if the whole world operates like that, may or may not be the right thing to do for our company, right? I mean, and then we did what was right in our circumstances, for our people, for our situation, and most of those intuitive calls actually were the right things to do in hindsight, right? And then they led to certain inflection points. So I think you got to look at inflection points as constant process of discovery of what works for you. You got to try many things. You don't know what, if you ask me that we knew the exact reason why we would succeed, we didn't. We discovered it along the way, right? Are we there yet? I don't think so, right? So even today, we don't know if we found that inflection point, if you ask me, right? But that's how you need to always have that attitude that we are not there yet.
Yeah, understood. I mean, it seems that Aloke is somebody who is typically looking at counterintuitive part, and that's a typical Aloke for me. Rajnish, you as an entrepreneur, what is your big dream, big goal for India as an entrepreneur?
I think if you look at the US economy, it's at what, 27, 28 trillion right now, close to 30 trillion. And that's precisely, I mean, the reason for that is because there are at least, I think 4 or 5 trillion plus dollar companies out there, like Apple, Google, Amazon, now Nvidia as well. I think for India, our dream as Indians should be that, there should be a day in our lifetime that we should be able to build $1 trillion company right from here. Like a company started in India and becoming $1 trillion company. And I think that's what would probably make all Indians proud. But I guess it's a little far away, but I think if we cannot do it as an economy, I don't see right now there's anybody else who could probably do that. So we are definitely at the right spot. As an economy, India is definitely the place where such a company could come up, right? And there are some amazing companies which have done great in the last 1 decade. Hopefully in the next 1 or 2 decades, there should be a $1 trillion company coming out of India.
Good to know, glad to know. Before we actually close, Aloke, anything which you love doing as an entrepreneur? I know that you have to do many things, but
I think
one thing you love.
I think what I love about this is that every day there is something new to deal with, right? So there is, and I've said this many times on this show, but there is no playbook for many things. And when you're faced with such things, for me, it's actually exciting rather than depressing, because that means there's no right or wrong answer. You got to discover it along the way. So that's the most fun part for me.
Thank you so much for joining in. It was a lovely conversation. Thank you so much.